Welcome to the Poison Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Gregory. Witchcraft has a long storied history throughout the centuries in different cultures around the world. If you go as far back as 1486, the written manual Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of the Witches, was created by two German monks. It is said that this was the most sold book after the Bible for 100 years, used by the church to help identify, punish, and put witches to trial, defying prominently women as evil and often associated with devil worship, a scapegoat to explain misfortunes like failed crops and bad weather as brief examples. In society, witchcraft, sorcery, magic, and occults invariably have had a place in the shadows, a backdrop of diverse forms of beliefs and practices that have survived generations of kings, queens, eras, and time. And just like a sundial, nothing stays in the shadows forever. Today, the ideology of witchcraft is flourishing. In the digital age of Instagram, TikTok, and of course podcasts, you're only a few taps away from finding communities, sharing knowledge, ideas, and supporting one another. The social constructs of mainstream media has melded communities together and knocked the walls down of the stigma of practicing witchcraft. From baby witches to old crones, the variety and range of practices, rituals, and spells is embellished in every aspect of daily life. This new wave of self-awareness is far from the evils historically portrayed. Just imagine going back in time and say you can buy a grimoire in a bookstore. Crystals and tarot cards are as common as table salt. Yoga, meditation, and Reiki are accessible forms of therapy, and no, you are not burnt at the stake for understanding your own spirituality in terms of moon phases. So what is a modern witch? Well, when you talk about witches today, you're talking about it in such a broad sense. There are many types like hedge witch, hearth witch, sea witch, healing witch, and cosmic witch, to name a few. So let's get started and break some of these down. So one of the most common types of witches that I've run into is the eclectic witch. These types of witches don't have a set practice, tradition, or culture or religion that they derive their beliefs from, rather pulling values from many different sources, kind of tailoring them into something personal and unique. With a little of this and a little of that, there are no set rules and guidelines to follow. The majority of the witches I've met pull practices from green witchery and crystal witchery as a base and loosely follow old pagan rituals. When we take a look at green witches, also known as forest witches or garden witches, they are highly connected to the energy of the earth and are one with nature, being close to the spirit of Mother Earth and their natural surroundings. Most are green thumbs, with pretty awesome gardens with plants and herbs, which can be used in their cooking and spell work. Being close to nature and Mother Earth, green witchery is very close to elemental witchery, which is the study and practices based on the four elements: earth, wind, air, and fire. Elemental magic is based on honoring each element, most accustomed with calling on the elements in spell casting and performing rituals. Elemental witches may have an altar for each specific element, or they may personally identify with and work with one specific element. I think my favorite type of elemental witch is the fire witch. I've seen a few that are fire performers that freestyle juggle torches and batons while dancing in pagan ceremonial fashion. It's very cool to see if you ever get the chance. Similar to green witches are hearth witches. They combine the energies from the green and kitchen witch to guide and make a home a sacred space. While the green witch tends to want to make their home in nature, the hearth witch wants to invite nature and all her elements into the home. A hearth witch's practice is part herbalism, counseling, energy healing, and crafting. Hearth witches observe nature's cycles, rhythms, and pauses closely, and are usually tuned into the four elements. Magical homemaking activities are at the core of a hearth witch, where there is nurturing elements that they want to feed and care for the soul. Sewing, knitting, and candle making, for example, are found to be grounding and sacred. My wife is a hearth witch. Shameless plug for her candles at thehearthcraft.com. The next type of witch I'm going to talk about is cosmic witches, which are contemporary witches who look at the cosmos, astrology, and astronomy and work those elements and celestial energy into their practices. Often called star witches or lunar witches, These witches often follow the planets, alignments, and stars and moon phases to base their spells and rituals on. Crystal witches have the belief that crystals, gems, and stones have powerful energies when used in the right way. From healing properties to providing protection, crystals have long been instruments of witchcraft, dating as far back as the ancient Sumerians. Each stone has its own attributes, reducing stress, promoting healing, and to help align chakras. Which brings us into our next category of witches, the healing and divine. Most witches can dabble in the healing arts, but the witches that excel in this practice are considered healing witches. Some of the magical practices include hands-on healing techniques, which may include spells, Reiki, acupuncture, breathing work, and other forms of alternative medicine. Along with hands-on magic, healing witches will often use herbs, oils, and plants for healing remedies, so you could have a green witch that specializes in healing witchcraft. Much of the magic that healing witches use is passed down through each generation, and the traditional techniques come from all around the world. Divine witches use their abilities to read the future, sometimes using tea leaves, crystal magic, tarot cards, palm reading, and pendulum readings. There are even witches that use birds and animals to practice divination, practices that date back in millennia. Historically, seers and fortune tellers have played a large role in magic circles with their intuition. Many cultures have their own versions of shamans or medicine men. And as with many types of witchcraft, it's common for different witches to practice divination. Both healing and divination witches have a focus on the body, mind, and soul. Of course, these are just a few main types of witches that I've personally ran into. From what I've witnessed in my community, witchcraft is based personally on the intentions of the practitioner, where people use their intentions to bring them to a personal higher state of enlightenment and consciousness and do good within our community. Based on a mass media case study done, Mass Media on Religious Identity, a case study of young witches, in the result of the case study, it was stated that the reason many young people are choosing to self-identify as witches and belong to groups they define as practicing witchcraft is diverse. However, the use of pop culture witchcraft in various media platforms can be the spark of interest for young people to see themselves as witches. Most witches in pop culture today are far from the devil-worshipping black magic evil of the European witch hunts and the Salem witch trials of the past. More so, it is safe to say that witchcrafting in the 21st century is a means of providing young women, men, and non-binary with what they see as a means of self-empowerment, control over their own lives, and potentially a way of positively influencing the world around them. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Poison Culture, and thank you for listening. In the future, we'll be talking in depth with a few of the witches in each category and getting their own points of view. If you like this episode, be sure to follow us on Instagram at the Poison Culture Podcast. Until next time, stay spooky.